Hello, and welcome to our podcast on the gender divide at The Ohio State University. Today, we'll be looking at various students' perspective on how gender plays a role when it comes to our athletics. Supported with research, you will hear firsthand from students of the university and their personal opinions on the topic. Let's get started.
Hi, my name is Bridget Mayer, and our topic of discussion today is gender inequality in college sports.
Hi, I'm Shannon Becker. I'm a senior here at OSU, and I'm studying speech and hearing sciences.
All right. Have you heard about the recent news regarding pay for NCAA athletes? Athletes are allowed to essentially make money off of their names, their image, and likeliness. Do you think that this will affect the gender divide when you think about sports at Ohio State?
Yeah, because I don't know really any of the female athletes at this school, but even more so, I don't know any who've gone on to continue playing sports and make money after college.
Do you think that male athletes here at OSU have like a high chance of making money now that this new rule has been passed?
For sure. I can think of a lot of names just because of how big football is here at OSU. I hear names all the time, so I do recognize the players. And I know some people in the past who obviously weren't making money off of playing here, but their names were so big that if this had been a rule at the time, I'm sure that they would be making money now.
So for our next question, I'm going to talk a little bit about a research study. So in 1996, there was a study called Can Gender Equity Find a Place in Commercialized College Sports? And these researchers discussed the participation of women in college sports as well as the recruitment process. And they had found that of the money provided for recruitment by colleges, only about 35% of it goes to recruiting female athletes or for female athletes scholarships. Depending on where you go to school, if it's a bigger school such as OSU, a lot of schools tend to have more money that are put towards athletics. For example, some schools have about $20 million to give out for scholarships. That includes male and female. So only 35% of that $20 million would go to female athletes. What is your opinion on this?
Obviously, that's not contributing to the equality between men and women's sports if they're giving out not only less than half of the money, but basically a third of it to female sports. It makes me wonder how much better the female sports could be here and how much more, I guess, PR they could get if they were putting more money into it. So it makes me wonder why 2/3 of the money at OSU is going towards the male athletes when the female athletes could be just as entertaining. And maybe if they have put more money into it, then people would see the female sports as just as entertaining.
Overhyping. All right. Well, that is all the questions that I have for you today. We would like to thank Shannon Becker for participating in our questions research for today. So thank you for listening in.
Hi, I'm Adam Cantor, and I'm interviewing Ryan Marr, and today we're going to be talking about inequality of men's and women's sports. Okay, so Ryan, what do you think? Why do you think men's sports is more popular than women's sports today?
I think there's a clear and obvious physical difference between men's and women's sports. I'm someone who very openly agrees with gender equality, but it's also impossible to argue the other side of that. I think guys' sports brings a different intensity and physicality than women's sports do. Not to say that that's a knock on women's sports, but there's definitely a different style to each.
So should girls and guys be paid the same in sports, even if they're less popular? Talking about professional sports.
So professionally, I think the way each gender is paid now is kind of how it should be. It's kind of a market-based, how many people are watching, how many people are in the stands.
Do you think Ohio State has done a good job in promoting our women's sports that we have here?
I think Ohio State is a very football-driven school, so I think that is kind of where I'm going to take that like separately than the rest of the sports. I think women's sports may even be promoted more than men's sports. I get like emails about promotions for going to women's soccer games, women's basketball games, and all other sports all the time. I think they do a good job of distributing that attention evenly.
Okay, so then do you think funding for all collegiate sports should be the same, like women's field hockey and men's soccer?
I think each, like the men's and women's should get the same funding, but that's a very like sport driven statistic. So like football is probably going to take more money to fund than a smaller sport, but that funding is purely used for travel and equipment and things like that. So based on each sport, the guys and girls should be getting the same amount of funding.
Okay, that makes sense. Do you think women should be allowed to join men's sports if the lack of attention in women's sports isn't exactly what they're looking for?
Absolutely. If they can qualify for a guy's sport, why should we ever deprive them of that?
So you would be all for something like Carly Lloyd joining an NFL team, being the kicker?
Yeah,
Okay,
I think
yeah,
if anything, it's a huge positive. You're showing the equality between men and women.
I think that would be great for sports in general. For the future, what do you think women's sports is going to look like? Like, how do you think it's going to shape up? Do you think it's going to be comparable to men's sports?
We're definitely trending towards that direction. I don't know where that trend plateaus to whether or not it will ever be completely equal, whether it'll be common to see women in men's sports or whether we're kind of nearing the plateau. I don't think I know where that is, but we're definitely trending in the right direction.
Okay, Ryan, thank you for interviewing with me. Hopefully we could see a rise in women's sports on the collegiate level and also on professional level. Thank you. So according to an article, The Inequality of Sport, women account for 40% of all sports participation, but the media is not giving it out that same attention and not nearly close to that 40%. According to ESPN, they actually said that 2% of their media output is centered around women's sports, which is way below the 40% benchmark. And we can see this inequality across all platforms, across all sports.
Hi, I'm Emma Strobin, and I'm here with one of my friends, Megan, and she's on a sports team here at Ohio State.
Hi, I'm Megan. I'm a junior at Ohio State, and I'm on the women's rowing team here.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm just going to ask you like a few questions about your experiences on the rowing team and just athletics here in general. Okay, so do you think that there are inequalities among the sports teams here in general?
I think there's definitely a few inequalities. Like, obviously the football team gets treated differently than other sports, but I would also say that they're on kind of a different level than the rest of the teams here.
Why do you think that they are on a different level?
Mostly just because they bring in a ton of money to the university, and they're also kind of a big reason why a lot of people want to come to this school in the first place. And without a football team, we would definitely be a lot different of a school.
Do you think that without including football, there are other inequalities between the sports teams here?
Maybe some other male teams like men's basketball or even hockey get treated differently also.
Okay, so you're talking about like men's teams specifically here. So would you say that there is a significant gender divide when it comes to the treatment of sports teams here and like how much attention they get and stuff like that?
I think in general, men's teams get more attention and more focus on marketing and stuff like that. Like the emails that the university sends out promoting certain games and stuff, it's definitely more focused on the men's teams. And also if you look at like the Ohio State Athletics Instagram, there's definitely a lot of men's teams being featured there.
Mm-hmm. So have you ever seen like your women's rowing team being promoted in an email sent out to the university?
Definitely not. I haven't seen them promote one of our regattas on there.
Okay, so I guess we can talk about Title IX a little bit. Do you think Title IX has helped you and your teammates?
Yeah, I definitely think Title IX has been really beneficial for all of women's sports in general because it's forced universities and other organizations to more evenly disperse their resources among male and female teams, which makes it more fair for everyone. And I think without Title IX, things would be a lot different for for my team and women's sports in general.
I guess it is kind of sad that universities are forced to evenly disperse resources, but I guess it is really good that we do have that in place.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of sad, but it's definitely beneficial and has been necessary in a society like ours.
Yeah. So, do you think that the gender divide among sports is more of a societal issue rather than an Ohio State issue?
Yeah, I would say Ohio State is definitely not alone in having differences among genders in sport, but I would say it's more of a societal thing and not just here at Ohio State.
Well, I think that's pretty good. Thank you for talking to me. In the study titled Perspectives of Women College Athletes on Sport and Gender, the female athletes interviewed generally embraced their talents and athleticism. In fact, many of them felt like they were more comfortable embracing their athletic abilities in college than they did in high school. Yet, they definitely noted that there were significant gender disparities among the sports teams at their institution. I found the same sort of themes during my interview. My friend Megan definitely recognized her and her teammates' abilities, but noted a lack of recognition from the university as a whole when compared to the men's teams.
Thank you for listening to our podcast on sports inequality at The Ohio State University. Listening to various opinions and stories from students shows us that they recognize efforts put forth by OSU to promote women and men's sports as equals, yet they can also acknowledge that there is plenty more to be done in closing the gender divide in sports. We hope that that's something we can see in the future at colleges and universities everywhere. Thank you again for listening.